Today, I'd like to speak to you about an issue that is vital to reforming America: ending the war on drugs through drug sentencing and prison reform. Over the past 40 years, we have been waging a war against drugs with the war on drugs, with little to no success. A war that we lost many years ago, and perhaps lost before we even started it. This war has not only been costly in terms of money, but in terms of life and freedom for the individuals that have been arrested for small-time drug use with drugs such as marijuana. While no one wants to see a friend or family member on hard drugs, it's a reality that they are being used by millions of Americans, so the conversation must then shift toward treatment and ending addiction and away from imprisonment. While we often have looked to politicians to be tough on crime, we often overlook exactly what that will mean for Americans and Las Vegans in their everyday lives. Rounding up every small-time drug dealer and user and sending them to prison may make us feel safer. It does little to actually make us safer. This sort of blanket policy has been destroying cities, neighborhoods, and families for decades, and it needs to end now. The war on drugs and the privatization of our prisons has led America to contain 25% of the world's prison population, despite only possessing 5% of the world's population. Currently, we outpace notorious human rights abusers such as China and Russia in terms of sending our own citizens to prison. I don't know about you, but that is not a stat that I want us to be ahead in. Of course, we can't discuss the failed war on drugs and the privatization of our prisons without discussing the effect that these failed policies have had on our minority communities. Policies that have ravaged minority families in all American cities across the country. In the African American community alone, African Americans make up over 40% of the prison population, despite being only 14% of the nation's population. Again, the same story is being told in the Hispanic community, as Hispanics make up over 20% of the prison population, despite being only 16% of the overall population. These statistics are despite the fact that whites and minorities use drugs at the same exact rate. Simply unacceptable. While fixing this problem is not going to be easy, it's possible and necessary if we are going to save money, lives, and families. Thus, I am proposing a three-step plan to end our war on drugs and reform our prison system away from our for-profit model. The first step in unwinding the disastrous war on drugs is to decriminalize marijuana here in Nevada, which will come when we legalize it across the nation. The criminalization of marijuana is an outdated and archaic policy. Oftentimes, those arrested and charged with marijuana possession are light users simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marijuana not only shows little in terms of side effects, but it is shown to provide many positive benefits in terms of medicinal use. As Colorado and other states that have legalized marijuana have shown the nation, the legalization of marijuana comes with no more risk than having legalized alcohol or cigarettes. From increased tax revenue to police officers being free to go after real criminals to better protect the community, the effects have been overwhelmingly positive. This is a bipartisan issue that it can be achieved with courage and leadership, something I plan to lead the way on in Congress. The second step in this process is working on laws and programs dealing with harder drug use, drugs such as cocaine, heroin, and meth. These drugs are dangerous and destroy lives in every age group and race. Since we know that stopping drug use is difficult, we need to work on a solution for the problem of addiction and abuse. Unfortunately, our current policy dictates that we should send drug users immediately to jail and skip treatment altogether. Well, that approach has failed. What we need to do instead is invest heavily in treatment centers that have been proven to work in making a dent in solving drug addiction. As anyone who has known a current or former drug addict, they will tell you that they are never cured and it's a struggle, but with the help of drug treatment programs and therapy, they are better equipped to handle the issue of addiction with help and support. Something we need to provide instead of prison bars. So not only has treatment shown better results in imprisonment, but it's also proven to be tremendously cheaper. Not only will treatment help the patient in their battle with drug abuse, but it will also save taxpayers up to $20,000 a year when compared to imprisoning that individual. So choosing therapy over imprisonment is not only the morally responsible thing to do, but the financially responsible thing to do as well. Step 3, and this will be the trickiest of them all as it deals with a very powerful and entrenched lobby. The private prison industry that has taken over many of our communities and states in the name of privatization. The deals that have been struck with private, for-profit prisons have been a disaster for not only individuals and families affected from their outsized influence, but has also had an effect on the state's bottom line that costs states billions of dollars each year. Oftentimes, the deals have provisions that call for 100% capacity of those prisons, which leads states to write regressive and primitive drug sentencing guidelines that sentence our citizens to a lifetime of imprisonment for a hobby, mistake, or an addiction. These agreements end all chances of a city or state rewriting their drug and sentencing laws towards policies that are more modern and humane. Oftentimes, the private prison lobby has directly written these laws and sentences for state governments. That is completely unacceptable. I am 100% against private prisons, as I don't think the law should be dictated by a for-profit entity that have a stake in sentencing guidelines and laws. These institutions are a threat to American liberty and freedom that have overwhelmingly affected minority citizens and communities. I will propose simple legislation when I get to Congress that will end for-profit private prisons, that terminate existing contracts, and return prisons back to the states, where a financial motive is not a factor. I will do this by proposing a one-page bill to nationalize our nation's prisons. So there's my three-part plan to ending the war on drugs and reforming our prison problem: legalization, treatment, and ending for-profit private prisons. I hope you'll join me in reforming our drug laws and making sure that we stop sending Americans to jail for unnecessary and archaic reasons. Come join the campaign at singerforcongress.com. Thank you.